So I'm a little late starting again. I spent the morning working on another video about the case of missing Queensland teenager Phoebe Bishop, 17-year-old from Queensland, Australia, who's now been missing since 15th of May. They now have homicide detectives involved. They also have canines in the bush helping search, and it sounds like they have, in fact, removed items of interest from the area where they're searching, which is a national park area roughly 40 minutes drive away from where Phoebe was living. There's been some, I guess you could say, disturbing new details that have come out with regards to this case, so definitely worth checking out the updates if you've not done so already. This is now my third video on Phoebe's case, so I've created a playlist, so if you haven't seen any of the videos, just hop over to my channel homepage, click on playlists, and you will see the playlist for Phoebe Bishop, so you can watch the videos that I have created. I am currently working on another Jack and Lily video, another somewhat in-depth one, so I'm not sure that I'll get it out today, but I will make that next on my agenda after this video. So this video is part 4 of my breakdown, discussion, whatever you want to call it, of the interview with Maddie's former stepfather, Stephen Young. If you've watched the previous 3, you know that I'm still a little bit uncertain of what I think of this guy. It seems that he has contradicted himself a few times. It also seems that Detective Morris has once again not been so good when it comes to asking clarifying questions. I think though, regardless of that, we've certainly gained a lot of insights into Jenn from Stephen. I think there's a part of him that wants to protect Jenn because after all he was married to her for some time, but given that the last thing we listened to yesterday was him saying that I think she's had so many mental issues that it caused lapses that caused this, I think he's been struggling to accept the fact that Jenn definitely played a role in what happened to Maddie. So I think that is perhaps why we've had the contradictions throughout this video so far, or throughout this interview so far, because he is probably grappling with it himself.
If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. This is a difficult question, but it has to be asked, and it's asked of other people as well. Do you think Jenn had anything to do, or do you think she had knowledge of what was happening to Maddie?
I've been trying to ask myself that ever since I found out Steph was arrested, and I thought that he was, somebody that was there to protect Maddie. And honestly, I think she could have made enough, I don't say stupid decisions, but wrong decisions with timing meds and things like that this kind of stuff could have happened, but I don't think there's any way she would have deliberately known, or if she had known, wouldn't have tried to get her out, of that situation. Like, she has family she can go to. She has friends like me and other places that she knows she can go to other state to escape someone. I felt like if she really felt like she was a danger, she would have gotten out.
He just can't quite let go of his need to defend Jenn, can he? First of all, we have Detective Morris asking him, do you think Jenn had anything to do or had knowledge of what was happening to Maddie? And in terms of that, he's probably the most honest person we've come across so far. Because he starts saying, I've been trying to ask myself that. So he doesn't immediately go, no, no way. And he says, honestly, and you can pause. So right here, we are losing the flow in terms of what he's saying. So this is something that is difficult for him to say, something that he's perhaps questioning whether or not he should be saying it, I would imagine. So honestly, I think she could have, and he paused, made enough, and he starts to say stupid, stops himself. I don't want to say stupid decisions, but wrong decisions with timing of meds and things like that. That this kind of stuff could have happened. Note he's now disregarded his previous comments about Jenn basically checking out and deciding to let other people be responsible for Maddie. And now he's just blaming it on her meds and essentially saying, oh, if she's been over-medicated, maybe that allowed it to happen. So he's even backing away here from allocating any blame to Jenn. And, I guess you've got to consider he's known her for 10 years. He was married to her. He, for a while, believed her to be like a mother to his child. So this would be a hard conclusion to come to. But, he's kind of trying to give her a free pass here. Instead of going back to, she checked out on Maddie. If she didn't want a parent, she'd just fob her off to someone else, and she's probably fobbed her off to Stefan. Instead of admitting that, instead he starts going down the, well, if it was, it's got to be because of her meds track, rather than saying that she's knowingly been responsible. I'd love to hear what he has to say about the Woody Allen comment from Jenn. Because after him humming and hawing and saying, well, yeah, maybe she could be responsible in terms of not probably taking her meds and, allowing it to happen that way. Then he turns around and says, I don't think there was any way she would have definitely known, or if she'd have known, she wouldn't have tried to get her out of that situation. Well, we know that is definitely not the case. Jenn really didn't give a damn. Jenn was in it for Jenn. We've heard her Woody Allen comment. We've heard Stearns make a similar comment in his jail calls. She knew things were going on. So it's very naive here for Stephen to suggest that if she'd have known, she would have tried to get Maddie out. That's just complete utter BS. We have Jenn admitting that Maddie was doing so much better, and their relationship was better after Stearns moved out. But then at the same time, in the next breath, she's saying, oh, we were trying to get him to move back home. Maybe Jenn didn't believe or didn't suspect that Stefan was capable of unaliving Maddie. And maybe that came as a surprise to her. But I'm certain she knew about the other stuff and allowed it because it allowed her to check out. We now know that was her habit from even before she was with Stearns. When she was married to Stephen, she had those times when she checked out and didn't want to take on the role of being the parent and basically didn't want the children anywhere near her. And it sounds like that's exactly what she's continued to do. But this time she's had Stearns as an in-house assistant to take over responsibilities for Maddie. And he's got perks from that. She was willing to have him move back in, knowing full well what was happening, in my opinion, because with him gone, it made it harder for her to check out. It made it harder for her to ignore the responsibility of being a parent.
Who do you think she would confide in?
I thought it would have been Ash. I thought it would have been Ash. I was hoping that those two would have a close enough relationship that if something happened to one, they could tell the other. Because everybody needs someone like that.
How has your daughter taken it?
She's been broken. She's just been... It's kind of felt like the journey I've been on. It just felt like the first 5 days was just solid crying, and now it's just feeling numb. Like there's no tears left. It's not that we're not sad. It's just feel empty.
I can understand him hoping that Maddie would decide that his daughter was the person to confide in. But let's be realistic about this. His daughter was 2 years older than Maddie and essentially like a sister to Maddie. Well, when I think back to when I was Maddie's age and some of the things that I got up to with my best friend, which were somewhat naughty, things that I certainly wouldn't have wanted my parents to find out about, I never would have told my sister about any of that. And I think Maddie would have been afraid of telling Ash about any of the stuff that was going on in case Ashley did say something to her father. Because I can imagine for Maddie, it all would have been a source of shame. So she would have been more likely to confide in someone that wasn't family, possibly a best friend had she had the opening, possibly a trusted adult if she had formed an attachment in terms of an adult that wasn't family, but she felt she trusted them enough to confide in them. But sadly, she didn't have any of that. I mean, I think as adults, maybe Maddie and Ashley would have had that kind of relationship where they did confide in each other with everything. But when it is a sibling kind of relationship, there is always that risk of, if you tell them, they might tell a parent. So, yeah, sadly, as much as he would have hoped that to be the case, I just don't think it ever could have been the case. I mean, sure, if Maddie was being bullied at school or something like that, something where there wasn't so much shame for her, because she wouldn't have understood that it wasn't her fault and that she was not to blame in any way and that she shouldn't be ashamed. A 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl going through what Maddie went through, particularly if she was being told by this trusted adult that this has to be our secret, you can't tell anyone, it's too big a secret to share with someone like a sort of sibling. So yeah, minor things she probably would have shared with Ashley, but not something like that.
I know when this was all first going down and Stefan got arrested, that you and Jenn had conversations about securing an attorney for him and stuff like that.
I thought he was innocent. And I was hoping that, okay, we can get this guy cleared so we can find the right person, and that way it will help everything run smoother. So let's get all the ducks in a row. Let's get him. And like I remember him on the phone. He was like, "I'm on my phone." I was like, "Don't worry about the phone. Like they have it. It's there. So we can buy you another one. You know, it's not a big deal. What you need to do is let them go through it, do what they need to do, so we know you're clear, and that way they could find who this really was." And that's what, because I thought that he was there to protect her too.
So honestly, if this guy is being truthful here with the detective, then I'd imagine he would have ended up doing a lot of soul searching after this interview. Because you have Detective Morris asking him about Jenn, contact him to get an attorney for Stefan. And he says, I thought he was innocent. And he also says, I thought that he was there to protect her too. Well, he said that at the start of the interview, but then he said all these other things that showed that actually he really didn't trust Stefan. And he didn't necessarily think that Stefan was the right person to be around Maddie. So either he really hasn't come to grips with what it was he truly believed, or he's lying to the detective here. Because it's pretty clear from everything he's said that he certainly had his reservations about Stefan. Now, he brings up Stefan in that damn phone as well. Stefan saying to him, I want my phone. Like a petulant child. I want my phone. Mummy took my phone off me. Can you make Mummy give my phone back? Was that one of the things that was discussed in terms of, when I get a lawyer, when you get me a lawyer, can you tell my lawyer that I want my phone back? And it sounds like Stephen has said the exact same thing. Or maybe Jenn was just quoting Stephen, as she seems to do, in terms of basically saying what everyone else has said and then making it sound like she said it. Because he's said, yeah, I told him we can buy you another phone. Let them have the phone so they can see that you are not involved and get on and get the right person. I wonder what he was really thinking when he was saying that to Stefan. Because I would find it utterly unbelievable if he said he had absolutely no doubts whatsoever.
But he was asking for his phone. They say why?
I think he meant something like he wanted to check his packages. Like, he was always obsessed with buying shit. Always has about buying shit. I didn't quite understand that. Like, it threw me off, and I should have questioned it more in that moment when he said it, but I was just in such a frazzle. Just like, no, we got to find out who did this. Like, if you're not it, let's get you a lawyer so we can make sure everything is done correctly, and then they can move on to find whoever that is. And then, like, once I found it was him, it was just like, I fucking defended this guy. I thought that he was there for her. Like, I would not have tried to defend this guy if I knew in any way, shape, or form that he was in any way culpable.
So is it just that Jenn ringing him asking for help for a lawyer just took him, was so out of the blue that it just kind of wasn't something that he had time to process? And now he's saying that, he wouldn't have done it had he realised. Because he's still saying these things that show that he did not trust Stefan. And he even points out, well, Stefan said that, the reason he wanted his phone was because he wanted to check packages, and that threw me off. I should have questioned him more in that moment. You should have trusted your gut, dude. That's essentially what he's saying. So throughout this interview, he's made it so clear that he didn't trust Stefan. And now he's even saying that when he spoke to Stefan and Jenn on the phone, he had his reservations because of Stefan wanting to check his packages. And yet he still either ignored his gut feeling or he's just lying to the detective here and wanting to sound like he suspected nothing and wasn't trying to help Jenn out with someone who was totally guilty. Because the next thing he says too, which again suggests to me that he really wasn't 100% on board, is he says, I said to Stefan, if you're not it, let's get you a lawyer. That's like your kid comes home from school and they're upset and they're like, I got into trouble because little Johnny stole Freddie's chocolate bar and I got the blame. And your kid's got chocolate all over his mouth. And you're like, okay, well, if you're really not it, let's go down to the school and sort this out with your teacher. And you can explain to the teacher that it wasn't you and that the teacher needs to talk to little Johnny instead. It's that whole reaction of when you say if you're not it, you're expressing that you have some doubt. You're expressing, you've told me you're innocent, but I'm not entirely certain. So, you know, even though he's saying here to the detective that, you know, he thought he was innocent, he thought he was there to protect Maddie too, his words just don't quite show that. And then he has to double down on the act of, I was duped by them. You know, I didn't believe it and I got duped because I thought the better. You know, he goes on to say, once I found out it was him, I was like, I effing defended this guy. I thought that he was there for her. How many times has he said that in this interview? Who's he trying to convince? Because he's trying to be overly persuasive here. And he has to double down on it. I would not have tried to defend this guy if I knew in any way, shape or form that he was in any way culpable. And yet his language has suggested that he definitely had his doubts. So this seems like he is basically trying to be a little bit over persuasive by saying that there's no way known he would have tried to help him out had he had even an inkling. Because it's quite clear that he did have an inkling and possibly more. So again, we're back to the question of, was he trying to convince Detective Morris or was he trying to convince himself? I will admit, after I finish going through this interview, I was sitting down and listening to it again right through myself because I still can't quite figure this guy out. It would be good if we actually had, like, you know, a visual as well to go with this. I mean, in terms of speech, you get very little signs of, you know, his cadence changing or any of the usual signs that would show deception. But he contradicts himself so many times. He says one thing and then 5 minutes later he says another thing which shows that actually he didn't believe that first thing that he said the first time.
I feel like an
What point did
idiot.
that change for you?
Which,
Where you went from, hey, they might have the wrong guy, let's get him an attorney, to F this guy.
once I found out that they found all the stuff on his phone.
Okay.
Once that came out, I'm like, what the? Like, I was surprised.
And again, we have Detective Morris talking over the top of him. So he's there saying, I felt like an idiot, while Detective Morris is asking him, at what point did that change for you? Now, him saying, I felt like an idiot, could on the surface sound like he's saying, wow, I had no idea and I feel so stupid for not realising. But to be quite honest, it sounds like more like someone trying to give an excuse. I would expect him more to be saying something along the lines of that he was angry that they tried to get him involved. By saying he feels like an idiot, he's essentially saying that he did have an inkling that something wasn't quite right there. Because you're not going to say you felt like an idiot if you acted in good faith and there was absolutely no sign there that you shouldn't act in good faith. Saying you feel like an idiot means that there were signs that you ignored. And then you get his answer over at what point did all that change for him in terms of believing that Stefan was the good guy, essentially. And he says, once I found out about the stuff on his phone, once that came out, I was like, what the F? I was surprised. He was surprised? Really? That's the description you're going to use when you discover that this guy that you supposedly believed was innocent, this guy that you believed had Maddie's best interests at heart and was there for her, and you were just surprised. Again, it doesn't align. He's not expressing what I would expect to hear from him. I would expect to hear him saying he was enraged. He was livid. He wanted to go and deal with Stefan himself. Maybe even shocked. But not surprised. That is one of the mildest reactions you could have over the fact that this guy, who you said you trusted, had been doing all these things for Maddie for at least 4 years and keeping digital evidence of the fact. It really does not sound right to say, I was surprised. Why are you putting it that way? Why such a mild reaction? Saying you're surprised by something suggests less of an emotional connection. I'll give you an example. I sat down this morning and I was about to start recording for one of my videos, and the lady next door came out into her driveway and was chatting with somebody quite loudly. And I figured, okay, this lady lives on her own, she's getting on a bit and she gets quite lonely. So she's one of these people that when she starts chatting, it's really hard to escape. And she will chat for ages until you finally manage to wriggle your way out of the conversation, usually by butting in, because you really can't butt in unless she stops for air. And you have to kind of butt in and do I've really got to go now, I've got such and such a thing to do. Otherwise, she will keep talking all day because she is, lonely and isolated. You can't blame her. So I was actually really surprised that the conversation only lasted 5 minutes. To me, it's inconsequential. It just meant that I was going to have to start recording a little bit later. It wasn't something overly important. So I do find it odd that Stephen is saying that he was surprised as opposed to he was horrified or angered or any of those sort of reactions that have that more negative kind of stronger connotations. Because, surprised is also more of it doesn't quite have the same negativity as saying you were angry or horrified or any of these things. So it does make me wonder if he wasn't the least bit surprised by what happened and he was half expecting it. Because like I said, we've heard so many times throughout this interview things that he's said that have indicated that despite him saying that he thought that Stefan was there for Maddie, that he didn't believe it and he didn't trust him. I mean, the conversation here sort of does require a description of how you reacted. The problem is his description of how he reacted doesn't really match how you would expect a person to react when they find out what Stefan was doing.
Did you hear about, was it through the media or was it through Jenn?
A combination of they both about came in at the same time. When I think Jenn was in questioning at that time, I wasn't able to talk to her for too much around then. No, I think she had messaged me before I saw it on the media that he was arrested because she was in shock that she had seen it and was told about it.
Honestly, I just can't figure this guy out. So he's been asked where he heard. Did he hear it on the media or from Jenn? And he's all confused. He's like, oh, well, both at once, kind of. This just doesn't ring true for me. I mean, he does then go, oh, well, actually, I heard from Jenn first. I think she messaged me before the media. But this is after saying, well, I think both came in at the same time because Jenn was in questioning and wasn't able to talk, and I wasn't able to talk to her that much. So in the space of 30 seconds, he contradicts himself. And this is why I've got a problem with it. This is something significant that should have come as a shock. This should have come as a kick in the gut. Because if you believed that this person was supposedly, if you believed Maddie was in good hands, you are going to be utterly shocked the first time you hear that little bit of information. So you are going to know exactly where you were when you heard that information and who you heard it from. Because you have that strong emotional reaction at the same time. It aids your memory. When you have more than one sensory bit of input occurring, then you are more likely to remember something. So for him to be really vague and like, oh, I think it was the media. Oh, actually, no, I think it was Jenn. I think she messaged me before the media. You would know. And then he goes on to say, she was in shock that she'd seen it and was told about it. So here he's using what I would expect in terms of the right description. She was in shock as opposed to she was just surprised. And if indeed she was in shock, that would make it even easier for you to remember that that's where you heard it first. So, I just can't figure out what's going on here with this guy at all. It just baffles me, the contradictions and the way he reacts at times. It just makes no sense.
Do you think it was genuine? Her being in shock?
I can never read somebody through text.
Mm-hmm.
Texts are emotionless. It's
Yeah.
like I can try and say I can read an emotion, but it's just text. I was a talker at the time, like in person. It's like that's why I need to see people's faces. I need to hear their voice, see their pace to get a better idea. A text is just words on a page. But she just seemed in. And she was trying to figure out like what degree should this guy be punished, and I was like, do it, like whatever if he committed a crime and they're asking you to press charges, press the charges, do it. And yes, she had told me before I saw on the news, because she was asking, was like, yes, press the charges, do it, like don't question yourself right now. He committed a crime, you let them press the charges, you let the police do what they need to do. So yeah, I did find out before the news.
Okay, I guess now the question is he just making this up as he goes along? Because he's asked, well, how do you know if she was genuinely in shock? How do you know that she was in shock? And he then goes on to say, well, I can never read reactions in text. It's just text, I need to see people to know how they're reacting, and text is just words on a page. But she seemed in shock. So he hasn't even said, oh, she said she was in shock here. He hasn't said why he believes it's genuine. He's just gone really vague with, oh, well, it was a text, so I don't know if it was genuine shock. But she seemed like she was in shock. And of course, there's no question here with what about it made you believe she was in shock? It sounds like he's just kind of gone, well, she should be in shock here, so I'm just going to presume that she is. He's not really given any concrete evidence of even why he believed she was in shock. And then he sidestepped away from that because, he's really good at avoiding answering questions and giving direct answers. And he talks about Jenn trying to figure out what charges or what degree this guy should be punished. Like, hello, not only did she sit there in the interview and say, well, if I choose not to press charges now, can I change my mind later? Like, hello, this was her daughter. Unreal. So even after that, even when she's had time after the interview to process what she's been told, she apparently messages Stephen and says, well, I don't know. She should know. This just makes me so wild that she had to actually ask someone what she should do. She had to ask someone if she should be wanting to press charges for her own child, for all these things that he did. And she can't figure it out for herself. She has to ask someone else what they think. And he's the one that has to say to her, do it, press charges. What is wrong with the woman? So, yes, he's segued away from saying how he knew she was in shock and if it was genuine shock. But he's, without realising it, has dumped her in it big time. Still doesn't show how he believed she was in shock or if he thought she was genuine. I mean, if he's trying to imply that her not knowing whether or not to press charges is a sign of her being in shock, well, that's a pretty poor example. Because to me, that should be an automatic response, whether you're in shock or not. As a parent, I don't know how many times I've said this, but you should be jumping out of your seat in the interview room and saying, let me at him, of course you have to press charges. So to me, that is not someone in shock. That is someone protecting Stearns.
Did Jen ever tell you about looking for Maddie or anything like that?
I asked Monday and Tuesday numerous times because I have family in the area and friends in the area that are all willing to come out and help search. And I kept asking, I was like, I can fly out, when can I come out? And she was saying nothing's organized yet. When I tried to talk to family members, they didn't have anything organized yet. And then eventually I saw that, I think it was Orange County requested that nobody be searching that area because they, my guess is they don't want people disturbing areas they want to investigate.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I need to wait. I can't go and help search. And that was, I remember I kept asking the first few days, like, can we come out and search? I had family members can help search. Like, are there any organized parties that are happening? And yeah, she just seemed in utter shock, and she couldn't wrap her head around it.
You see,
So he's basically using the excuse of Jen being in shock to excuse her for being a despicable individual. Here he is willing to basically fly in to help with a search, and he's telling her, you know, he's got family there in the area who can go and help search. And she just keeps putting him off and going, nothing's been organised. He's saying he's asked her several times in the first couple of days, and she's just essentially like, no, you know, don't worry about it. Nothing's been organised yet. That is not what you would expect to hear from a mother who is desperate. I would expect her to be like, oh, wow, thank you. You know, the more help we can have, the better. Not, yeah, no, don't worry about it. Nobody's really started organising anything yet for searches. So, yeah, no big deal. Maddie's missing, but yeah, no, I'm not bothered. Don't worry about coming here. Because, you know, we haven't gotten around to organising anything yet. Like, are you serious? That is just insane. It's just utterly ridiculous. That's got to be even worse than her asking Stefan, oh, why would you want to search there? And yet, instead of looking at it and seeing it as being somewhat despicable behaviour, he just puts it down to her being in shock. Seriously? I think my question to him would have been, okay, if you thought she was in shock, did you make any efforts to contact any of her other family members to see if you could get better answers from them? I bet the answer would be no. But I just want to point something else out. Now, he goes on about, you know, Maddie's like his daughter and he cares so much for Maddie, all this sort of stuff. And Jen's saying, oh yeah, you know, don't fly down because we haven't really got anything organised yet by way of searches. So, you know, don't come to the bother of flying down here. Now, if I lived in a different state from my sister and I found out that my niece was missing and I contacted her and she was like, well, no, we haven't really started searching yet. We haven't really started doing anything like that. So, no, don't worry about it. I'd be on the first plane there and I'd be organising that damn search myself. And yet that apparently didn't cross his mind. I mean, it's not a situation of him saying, I heard about it, but I couldn't get away. I couldn't get a flight. He was saying to Jenn, what's the story with searches, because I'll be there in a flash. And yet when she's like, yeah, no, don't worry, he's like, okay then.
Seemed like you lived in Kissimmee for a little bit, or Kissimmee, Orlando area for a little bit.
Yep.
Ever live in St. Cloud or anything like that?
No.
Does Jenn or Stefan have any connections to St. Cloud that you know of?
Not that I know of.
I know you've been gone for a little bit, but
The only thing I know that might be down, because we were trying to look up stuff in the area when they're trying to find the bodies, we found there's a Warhammer store down there. I know he was really into Warhammer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very expensive game. So I don't know if he's familiar with that store. That's the only thing that I can think of. But I don't know personally that he went there. It was just a guess that we were trying to look to see if something was associated with them.
All right.
So I'd like to know if Jenn is one of these women who gets in a relationship with a guy and then just forgets all her female friends exist. Or if he's just oblivious to where Jenn's friends are and stuff like that. Because we know that at least one of those two friends of hers that live in St. Cloud was friends with her since she was a teenager. So in all the time that him and Jenn were together, I know, you're only looking at like a 2-3 year period. But are you telling me that never came up? That this friend who is supposed to be a really close friend of Jenn's, who lives at St. Cloud's, you knew nothing about? Maybe he's just forgotten? Because I guess, we are talking a long period of time since him and Jenn were together. And, I mean, as for the other friend, on the way to Lake Lizzie, I mean, we don't know when they became friends, so I guess we can't judge on that. But, I mean, when did Jenn start going to Lake Lizzie to hike? Because we know that was occurring before her and Stefan got together. And there isn't a huge gap, time-wise, between when her and Stefan got together and before that, when her and Stephen split up. And we know that at some point in time, before Jenn and Stefan got together, she had moved down south. So I do think that the whole Lake Lizzie thing may well have dated back to Stephen also. So, like I said, is she just someone who, when she's with a guy, just forgets that all her other friends exist? Or is he just kind of oblivious to where her friends live? Or is he just forgetting? Or, I don't know, I can't think of other scenarios. But it's interesting that he claims that he doesn't know of Jenn having any connections there.
Did he ever disclose anything to you? Maybe not specifically about Maddie or anything, but being into certain things?
No, I was trying to think too if there's anything about sex we ever talked about or relationships or anything like that. The only thing I ever heard is from other but that's all like secondhand. I have no validity to it. I can't validate anything. It's just secondhand something I heard. So, great.
Now that's interesting. So he's been asked if Stefan had mentioned anything to him about being into certain things. And Stephen's saying, no, he never said anything. But then he's talking about something that he heard second hand. And the way he's talking about it, that's all, I only heard that second hand and I have no validity to it, I can't validate it. That's someone saying that they've heard something possibly a bit scandalous, something a little bit negative. When you start protesting, well, I've only heard this secondhand, I can't validate it. That's not you saying something positive about someone. You're not going to say, oh, I heard that he's a real gentleman and loves to buy people flowers. Oh, that's all secondhand, I can't validate it. No, because you're not worried about being accused of saying something salacious that isn't wrong. So whatever it is he's said here, it is clearly something that shows Stefan in a bad light. And he's concerned enough to say, look, but I can't validate that. And yet, again, we go back to him claiming that he believed that Stefan was there for Maddie and he was the good guy and that she was in good hands and all this stuff. This to me suggests that he did have specific concerns, not just a sense of, I don't like this guy and I don't trust this guy, but that he's heard something that has been concerning enough for him that now he's saying, oh, well, I can't validate it though. I definitely believe that he had a sense that things really weren't right in terms of Maddie being there with Stefan. And whether he's trying to justify this, and I've said this so many times now, whether he's justifying it to himself or the detective, I don't know. But it seems like, he tries with the positives, but then you get all these negatives that come out that show that, yeah, he really didn't think Stefan was all that good.
Heard this when?
Recently.
Like when this is going on, or prior to?
Like when this is going on. Okay. I've heard this from people. I didn't know this beforehand. This is all, yeah.
This definitely seems to be his other go-to. I only found out after all this happened to Maddie. So apparently he has all these people telling him things that they knew about Stefan, which is presumably to do with kinks or something like that. And now he's saying, yeah, but I only heard about that after all this happened with Maddie. Meaning, I thought he was a good guy. I had absolutely no idea. Sure, I heard all these things, but I only heard them after everything had happened. Surely, if it was such common knowledge, then these people who he's not naming, knowing that he was Jen's ex-husband, would have mentioned these things to him about Stefan. I don't know, I just really get the sense that this guy is not overly genuine in what he is saying. And that he is, on one hand, wanting to make sure he distances himself. He had no idea, he didn't see anything. he didn't suspect anything because he thought Stefan was the good guy. But on the flip side of it, he just keeps putting his foot in it and essentially admitting that there were so many signs that things weren't right.
When was the last time you talked to Jenn?
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah. I think I texted her earlier today just check on her.
In what context?
Just checking on her, seeing how they're doing. I still feel like her family is really close to me. Like her dad, Juan, and Yolanda have done a lot for me and Ashlyn over the years, even after we split up and divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm still trying to go to help Juan out to get his apartment settled. I'm trying to be there for Yolanda if she needs anything. I do worry about Jenn and her mental health, and, you know, if she had nothing to do with this, then I would be there for her. If she has something to do with this, then take care of her. Like, do what you need to do. Like, I'm not here to defend somebody who's guilty. Anybody that hurt Maddie in any capacity, like, I want you to please do your job.
Okay, so first of all, I have kept calling her Ashley instead of Ashlyn, so apologies for that. Now, I think the penny's finally dropped here. So, first of all, the question was, you know, are you still in communication with Jenn? And he said, well, I spoke to her yesterday and I texted her this morning. And then he goes on to talk about, you know, helping with moving out of the apartment, and he goes back to talking about how Yolanda and Juan have supported him so much. And I'll come back to that in just a moment. And then he says, I mean, basically he's saying that he's being as helpful as he can with the entire family, not just Jenn. And then he says that he worries about Jenn and her mental health. And here's when we start going in an interesting direction. If she's had nothing to do with this, I'll be there for her. If she had something to do with this, do what you need to do. This is the first person who's not flat out defending Jenn. And clearly he's got his own reservations about Jenn. This is not something that you are going to say about someone unless you genuinely have reservations that they may in fact be involved. And that if they are involved, you're done with them, essentially. Because that's what he's saying here. He's saying, you know, I'll support Jenn if she's got nothing to do with this. But if she was somehow connected with this, I'm done with her. Do what you like with her, I'm done with her. And he says, I'm not here to defend someone who's guilty. Anybody who hurt Maddie in any capacity, I want you to please do your job. Ask me anything you know. So the question here is, well, why is he saying this now when it sounded like throughout the interview he's been defending Jenn to the point of pretty much denying that he had reservations about Stearns? But he's told us here exactly why he's still being loyal to Jenn and why he's still defending Jenn despite what seemed to be some serious reservations on his part. He is loyal to Yolanda and Juan. Whatever it is they've done for him to help him out in the past, it sounds like it's been significant. It is that sort of loyalty you feel to someone who has made a huge difference in your life. Someone who has been there for you when you really, really needed them. So I think what's going on here is that he has this immense loyalty to Yolanda and Juan because they have been there for him in the past. And he knows that by speaking up against Jenn, he's actually betraying them. And he doesn't want to do that because he has this loyalty towards them. But he also cares deeply about Maddie. So he wants to make sure that if Jenn is responsible, that she is punished to the full extent of the law. His loyalty isn't to Jenn here. His loyalty is to Yolanda and Juan. So what I'm thinking, putting all this together, is yes, he was keeping an eye on Maddie from day one. Because he didn't trust Stefan. He didn't like Stefan. And he also didn't believe that Jenn was going to do the right thing by Maddie because she had a history. He knew her better than anyone else, and he knew that she was going to do her thing of checking out on Maddie, and that chances are Maddie was going to be fobbed off on Stefan. And if he already didn't trust Stefan and didn't like Stefan, then no wonder he wanted to keep tabs on Maddie. No wonder he was hoping that Ashley and Maddie would stay connected. Because he genuinely was concerned that things weren't going to be right for Maddie. But, you know, you have this situation where, for starters, his mother-in-law wasn't keen on him being heavily involved anymore with his ex-wife, which is quite reasonable. So that limited what he could do. It sounds like it's been a long time since either of the girls had been, like, together for a visit. I mean, he's saying that the last time he stayed with Jenn and that was when they were down Port Charlotte. So that was like, 4 years previously. There was some reason that he had stopped doing that, and I'd say that was definitely to do with Stefan. So he has, throughout this interview, shown that he had serious concerns about Stefan, and he had serious concerns about Jenn's ability to look after Maddie and to keep Maddie safe. But out of loyalty to Yolanda and Juan, that's why he has, I guess you could say, lied to the detective and kept trying to dial it back to, I always thought Stefan was looking after her. I thought she was in good hands. I would never think Jenn would do anything like this, and yet he's multiple times then hinted that he does. He left Jenn because he wanted to get his daughter out of that situation. He didn't feel that his daughter was in a safe environment being with Jenn. Maddie wasn't his daughter. He had no control there. He couldn't take Maddie with him. Maybe he expressed concerns to Yolanda and Juan, but, well, we know they've said things to Jenn and they've fallen on deaf ears. So he's basically done he thinks he's done everything he could. He's removed his daughter from that bad environment. He's kept tabs on Maddie over the years. And he's told himself that he shouldn't get involved any further because A, Maddie's not his daughter, and B, he's loyal to Yolanda and Juan. He didn't want to cause problems for their family. Unfortunately, in doing that, he's let down Maddie. His loyalty to Juan and Yolanda cost Maddie dearly. You know, the fact that he brings up Juan and Yolanda straight after saying about how he was essentially trying to support Jenn at this point in time says it all. I'm willing to bet that if Yolanda and Juan weren't in the picture here, he would have cleared out back to Colorado and would probably never have anything to do with Jenn again. But because of his relationship with Yolanda and Juan, he doesn't want them to see him in a bad light. So he's making this effort with Jenn. I do suspect that he really couldn't give two rats about Jenn. Maybe I'm wrong. This guy's so hard to figure out. But based on the way he has said things here, I think that is what is at the base of all this. The only reason he has stayed connected to that family is, one, because of Maddie, because he was concerned for her, and two, because he had a deep loyalty to Yolanda and Juan for some personal reason, some significant personal reason.
Like, ask me anything you need to know. Like,
Do you think Jenn had anything to do with it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think she's just gone through a lot, and because of her mental health, it just caused lapses that ended up with this.
Okay, so Detective Morris isn't a complete utter failure. He has picked up on this flip-flopping in terms of what he's trying to say and what he believes, because he's just asked him again, do you think Jenn had anything to do with it? And again, we get this whole mental health excuse. I don't think so. I think she's just gone through a lot, and then he basically uses the excuse of, you know, she's had these lapses with her mental health that have resulted in this. Note he says, he doesn't say, no, I don't believe she had anything to do with this. He says, I don't think so. And he doubles down on that. I think she's just gone through a lot. Meaning, actually, he can't give a definitive answer. He can't give a certain answer. He's not positive. He's not standing up for her here and going, oh, hell no. She wouldn't have had anything to do with this. It's the opposite. On one hand, he says, I don't think so. But then he essentially is offering an excuse for her having something to do with it. Essentially saying, well, you know, it's because of her mental health issues. And it's because of her mental health issues that this happened. But no, I don't think she's got anything to do with this. But let me just give you an excuse for her. He's just so indecisive. He doesn't want to admit what he believes. And I think that when it comes to it, if they want to use him as a witness in the trial, he's going to need to be aware of all the background information, or he's just going to be this useless witness that can't give a straight answer, can't make up his mind, and gets utterly destroyed by the defence.
Do you think Stefan would take advantage of Jenn because of her mental health? Like, was her mental health diminishing? Well, you said it was kind of diminishing when you guys were together. That's one of the reasons you possibly split. Do you think when Stefan got together with her that she continued to degress or progress with her mental health? Or
it seemed to keep degressing. And not a psychologist, I don't know why that happens. I try and look stuff up, but I'm an armchair expert, so it seems like mental health, gets worse in your 30s. Yeah, maybe it's that. But I'm not a psychologist. I have no idea. I'm just a plumber who
so you
loves
make
a lot
the
of
big
people.
bucks then.
Not yet. Trying to build a company. We're almost breaking even.
So, another question that he dodged around. So, he's asked, do you think Stefan would take advantage of Jenn because of her mental health? He doesn't give any sort of yes-no answer here. He only goes as far as to say that her mental health seemed to continue to degress. But he's no expert on mental health, so he has no idea. My observation, based on what he's saying here, is that it was a mutual thing for Jenn and Stefan. She allowed him to take advantage, so to speak, because it allowed her to check out. So it was convenient for him that she had this tendency to check out, because it gave him free access to Maddie, with Jenn essentially being, I don't care, I don't really want any responsibility for Maddie. So it's a two-way thing. And I think that's probably why Stephen isn't answering this, because his own experience with Jenn would probably have told him that it was a two-way thing, and that while Stefan certainly would have taken advantage of the fact that Jenn was prepared to hand her child over to him, Jenn was also taking advantage of the fact that he was willing to allow her to do so. For her, he was her live-in nanny, and she really didn't care what he did with Maddie, so long as she got to check out and avoid being a parent for a period of time.
How would you describe her emotions on a normal basis?
Jenn or Maddie? Jenn?
Jenn.
She kind of seems a little muted most days. A lot's happened to her. A lot of things have happened to her. That'd be hard for anybody to live with. And
Those things.
sometimes she gets excited about things, She definitely gets sad about things. She doesn't seem as outward with her emotions. You have to look at her, but you can see inside, sometimes she's torn and she's damaged, but the medications make it so you can't see it in her. She doesn't show it as much as another person would sometimes, but when you know her, you can see it inside of her. You can see how destroyed she is. You can see how anxious she is. She sometimes looks calm. And it's just one of those things, once you know somebody for so long, you can tell some stuff about them. But
do you think her reactions have been genuine?
I think so. I think she's just really medicating herself right now to get through it, and therefore she's really seeming really numb right now. But yeah, I keep seeing her break down and how sad she's been, and I feel it's legitimate, but I don't know if it's my own personal involvement with Maddie and my love for her that I don't think anybody else of that could have that capability of not loving Maddie. Maybe it's my own naivety, but my heart doesn't tell me that. But again, not a professional.
Wow. So the simple question was, how would you describe her emotions on a normal basis? And he goes all out here. So I didn't quite catch whether he said that they were low or that she was lonely most days. I think he was saying they were low most days. I don't know if it's just a thing with the accent or the way that he said it or what, but I was struggling a bit with that, which is why I slowed it down and played it again. And he offers the excuse of a lot has happened to her. It's hard for anyone to live with. And then he talks about her being sometimes excited about things, but definitely sad about things. So he's going all out here to portray Jenn as someone who's not really going to show what she's feeling emotionally. And he's trying to say, look, if you know her, then you know what she's feeling. But otherwise, she comes across as being a bit flat, even though he said, she can act excited sometimes. And again, he talks about her being damaged and doesn't show it as much as another person. But you can see it inside of her. So he's trying to justify her lack of emotion. And then he goes back to the questions, or sort of back to the question, and he's like, well, are her reactions genuine? I think so. So he's really not certain. He's not saying, yep, from everything I know about Jenn, definitely these are genuine reactions. No, he's just saying he thinks so. He's not even certain. And then he goes back to the excuse of she's just really I think she's just medicating herself right now to get through it, so she's numb. Well, we've seen her spark up in the interviews. We know it's not about the medication. I think it would have been Detective O'Malley asked her the question about the Fox News interview and said, did you say that you didn't want her to come home? And she fired up. And he did that deliberately to get a reaction from her, to see her baseline. And it worked. So we know that this is wrong. We know this is not the case. She's not so medicated. But then he continues to offer up more information. This is not something that's been asked for by Detective Morris, which means this is something that he thinks is important. And to me, it's a mic drop moment. I feel it's legit, but I don't know if it's my own personal involvement with Maddie. Now, I thought he was saying he feels that her emotions and her numbness and everything is legit, and the way she's reacting is legit. But what he says next is kind of mind-blowing. I don't think anybody else could have that capability of not loving Maddie. He wasn't asked, do you think Jenn loved Maddie? He was asked about her emotions, what he thought about her emotions. And he's offered up that he doesn't think that anyone else could have the capability of not loving Maddie. And he even adds on there, maybe it's his own naivety. I mean, crap. He's just basically said here, without realising that what he's spilling, he's essentially said that he's not sure if Jenn even loved Maddie. That is what is at the base of what he's said here. He's essentially said, I don't think anyone else could not love not, have that capability of not loving Maddie. But maybe I'm naive. He's talking about Jenn. He's suggesting that Jenn maybe didn't love Maddie. And then he backs off again, which he's been doing this all through the interview. My heart doesn't tell me that, but again, I'm not a professional. So, still no definite. My heart doesn't tell me that because I've seen the way she used to respond to Maddie, or I've seen the relationship. No, none of that. It's just my heart doesn't tell me that, but I'm not a professional, so I can't tell you that for sure. He has essentially said here that he's not even certain if Jenn loved Maddie. Wow. This is someone who knows Jenn really well. I mean, it's all well and good for us to say this, but this is basically what he has said. And he's offered it up. He wasn't asked, do you think Jenn loves Maddie? He's offered up this information himself. This is significant. He has his reservations. For him to bring this up says he truly believes that Jenn probably didn't love Maddie.
I know we touched on it a little bit, but have you known any medications that Maddie's on?
After we were talking about it, I think she was diagnosed with ADD and may have been on ADD med, but I don't know for certain.
Okay.
I can't swear under any oath that I know she was on any meds.
But you did say that medication that Jenn's been taking has caused her to go into a deep sleep or something like that, or.
Yeah, I think sometimes I don't know exactly which meds will knock her out, but I know I've been on meds before that make me completely knock out and pass out for the night, and use the time for bedtime just to make sure after all the parenting hours are done, gotta take it then. And I don't know which one she's been on and when, but I've been on medications like that for depression before, and sometimes they just knock you out. You can't help the medication. If that's what the doctor says is going to help you. You try and work with the doctor so you can get better. And
So he's actually made quite a presumption there in terms of Jenn and her medications. He's basically admitted here, no, he doesn't know what sort of meds Maddie's on, possibly something for her ADHD. And as for Jenn, he's basing it on his own experiences. He's been on drugs for depression before that have knocked the stuffing out of him and basically knocked him out. And so he's just basically presuming that that's also the case with Jenn. The thing is, there is just a world of different medications out there, and Jenn has the added complication of bipolar, meaning that she's probably going to be on completely different meds to what he is familiar with. So it is a giant leap for him to take. Sorry, Amira is growling because it's really, really windy outside. I don't know how her brain works, but And I think basically he's once again reverted back to trying to stand up for Jenn, even though he's already dished the dirt and basically shown that actually he does have his doubts about her.
How long are you staying down here for?
My wife and daughter are going to be flying back on Thursday. I'm going to help clear out some of the apartment on Thursday. I'll be flying on Friday. If you guys need to talk to me, have my phone number. Let me know. If there's anything you want me to ask my daughter, I really don't want her to get brought in to get questions. I don't want her to get too scarred. But if you guys have questions you would like me to ask her, and I can try to approach her in a soft way, I'd be happy to help in any way I can. I just want to make sure I'm not scarring her anymore.
Let me ask you this: does your daughter does she see any kind of therapist or anything like that on a regular basis?
We just before all this, we got her an occupational therapist, and we just got her started with a main therapist, like with a EAP 10-session program. And so that's where we're trying to get her back on Thursday because her first appointment's on Friday. But yeah, we're trying to.
Does her therapist know what's going on?
She is aware of what's going on. Social work at school is aware of what's on, and then her occupational therapist is aware, just so they all know before she steps in, everything.
Okay. Are they on board if she discloses something to them, to that law enforcement, or
Yeah, if there's something pertaining to this case that she finds out or they find out, like, I want them to be able to share it. Like,
because I know they can't share information with us because it's a patient-client.
I could talk to the therapist beforehand and ask him, like, hey, if you find out anything about this front, we need to contact some people so they can get the right information over. Is
that's between you and the therapist? We can't get involved in that,
right? But is that what you're asking?
If she happens to mention something during therapy and that is told to you, can you just please let me know?
Yes. Okay. Yes. If there's anything pertaining to this that will help out, like I will definitely let you guys know. Again, if anybody is part of this, I want justice to be served.
All right. Anything else? Do you? All right. We are going. It is 3:13. We are going to conclude this interview.
So, first of all, note how he's talking about how he's going to be helping Juan out with emptying out the apartment. So, it again shows that the loyalty there for him is towards Juan and Yolanda, not necessarily towards Jenn. Now, I'm in two minds about this discussion with regards to his daughter. It is admirable that he is basically saying, look, we've got help for her and I'll talk to these professionals and just say, look, if there's anything that comes out in discussion, can you let me know and I'll relay it back to law enforcement. There's a lot of problems with that as far as I'm concerned. Her counsellor, her psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever he's arranged for her, needs to be someone that she can feel 100% confident in. Someone that she can share information with and feel safe that they're not going to go to her parent. And I think most professionals are going to turn around and say to him, look, it's it's our job. We can't come to you and say your daughter has disclosed this. So him saying he doesn't want her questioned, saying, look, I'll talk to these guys and let you know if anything comes up, it is hugely problematic. And I'd imagine if anything was disclosed by his daughter, it may not be disclosed to him. Can you imagine if every parent went to their child's psychologist or psychiatrist and said, if my child discloses something really, really crucial, can you come and tell me? That just not good. So my question is this: do police divisions in the United States not have child psychologists on hand for questioning children in situations like this? Because, we saw the questions, the way that Maddie's friends were questioned. Some of that was a bit questionable, the way it was approached. There were times with Maddie's best friend when questions, the way they were asked, just made me feel really, really uncomfortable. And in this situation, you have a young girl who is ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and is also in some ways a sister to this girl who is deceased. So even if Stephen had said, yeah, I'm okay with her being interviewed, having her interviewed by just regular detectives could be problematic. So, you know, in an ideal world, it should have been a situation where, while they were still there in town, that she have a conversation with a police psychologist, someone who is essentially trained to interview the children, but is not going to sound like a detective, is going to understand the delicate psychology behind dealing with children like this. Someone who's not going to ask questions in a way that is going to be cringe-worthy or perhaps cause further distress. I mean, even if it's not someone who's on the county payroll, but a forensic psychologist who is specifically trained or, you know, who specialises in working with children. I feel that it is wrong that this young girl has not been interviewed, but I also can see why she wasn't interviewed. And I see a huge gap here in terms of what is being offered by these sheriff's officers. You know, that they should have access to a psychologist who can work with these children in the appropriate manner. So at the end of this interview, we have Stephen again saying, if anybody is part of this, I want justice to be served. I do think that he has serious concerns about Jenn's involvement. And I think that the reason he's held back in this interview, as I've mentioned, is not loyalty to Jenn, not a need to protect Jenn, but loyalty to Juan and Yolanda. So there we are. That's Stephen's interview. We've just gotten all the way through. I'm definitely going to sit down and listen to it in full, from beginning to end yet again, because there's so much to process there that I think I now need to just listen through and see if I'm right with what I'm saying here, and also see what I've missed. So I'm really looking forward to reading your comments to see what you guys are thinking here. I was originally, as you probably heard, in the first few videos, I was leaning towards him trying to protect Jenn, him lying for Jenn. But I think now, when I look back on it, I think he was basically trying to process things, but also not so much trying to protect Jenn, but feeling torn between the need to speak up for Maddie and a loyalty to Juan and Yolanda. I may be completely wrong, so let me know your thoughts. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button. That does help get my videos into the algorithm. And of course, please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.